Hello and welcome. Today we've got George Lewis, and today we are going to be discussing the end of an era. The Second Republic has been born, the astrology, what's going on with the new world, the age of Aquarius. Now, just before we begin, you can subscribe to my Instagram channel at nicholas.veniamin, where you can follow all my daily news reels. George, thank you so much for joining me. How are you and what have you been up to, sir?
It's really good to be on your show, Nicholas. Well, I'm down in Florida, which is wonderful. I'm doing some workshops down here and seeing a lot of clients and patients with astrology and sound therapy. But it's great to be able to share a little bit about the astrology because it's such a great tool for us to be able to understand what's going on in the collective. You know, the United States is in what it's called its Pluto return. So 248 years ago, Pluto was at 27 degrees Capricorn, which is right over the United States birth chart. And here we are again at this cycle. Pluto moves very slowly, but it's about transformation. And so we're really witnessing this shift in consciousness. Pluto cycle ago, people weren't so fully awake. They didn't really realize what was happening as far as the manipulation, the control system through the banking system. And here we are this time. The people are, thanks to people like yourself with your shows, are waking up to consciousness, are waking up to the truth. And of course, it's painful when we learn that actually the banking system or the pharmaceutical system has not actually been on side of we the people, has actually sought to enslave us and to really destroy us. And so this is part of understanding, using the lens of astrology to help us ascend and get into greater levels of consciousness.
Wow, absolutely. Now, when we move in the universe, when we go into cycles, does the universe and where we're at in the universe, does it energetically affect our awareness?
Yeah, I believe it does. I mean, I think when I use the term archetypes, I mean, the ancient Greeks used the term gods. So, for example, Pluto is Hades in the Greek, and that always represents transformation. So when Pluto is at a certain angle in the zodiac, it's going to carry a certain energy. It's like the sun. Maybe the sun is a better way to explain it because it's more immediate for us as human beings. When the sun is in Aquarius, which it is today, it's going to carry a different frequency. Say, which instead of when it's opposite in the sign of Leo, the sun likes to be in Leo. It's bold. It rules royalty. It's sovereignty. It's power. Especially in the northern hemisphere. It's at a high level of light. Where obviously we're in the winter at the moment. So the zodiac really allows us to see what the influences are. The astrology allows us to see what the influences are on us, we the people. And that's a useful tool. It's why the Vatican Church banned astrology through much of its the Catholic era, because it doesn't want the people to have access to this information. And so for me, it's really important that we can get access to it.
Now, interesting, you say that they banned astrology, and a lot of us do follow astrology. But what happens when we discover that there were 13 months as opposed to 12? What happens to the astrology then? How do we measure it?
I personally don't subscribe to that view. It always comes up because if you look at Orpheus is Asclepius, who is the grandson of Zeus, the son of Apollo. And if you actually look at that constellation, it only just dips into the ecliptic between Scorpio and Sagittarius. It does not take up 30 degrees. I mean, to be generous, it might take up 3 or 4 degrees. It's just above it. So it's not really part of the ecliptic where the sun goes around the Earth. So, or where we go around the sun. The ecliptic is where the sun is in relation to all the zodiac signs. So I don't really subscribe to the 13 signs. I think that's a little bit of a red herring and a way to distract us. And also another example of trying to make astrology not work.
Interesting. Okay, very interesting. Now, where does the Sirius star system fit into all of this?
Well, Sirius is separate. Those are the fixed stars. They're not actually on the ecliptic. So, I mean, it obviously carries a potent energy, like many of the fixed stars. But Sirius isn't exactly on the ecliptic, from what I understand. So it carries an energy, but it's not actually affecting us in the way that the zodiac signs affect us. So the sun, for example, when it's moving through Aquarius and on through Pisces, it carries that energy. But the thing is, it's not just about the sun, it's also the activation of the moon and the planets. I find it's best to start with the actual main planets because they're the ones which are immediate to us in our solar system. Where the fixed stars are really interesting, but that should come later because their power for potency or effect is much less than, say, Mars is or Venus is or Mercury is to us, and Saturn and Jupiter. Those are all the ones you can see without binoculars. And obviously Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, you need you need a telescope to see those.
So at the beginning, you mentioned that we're entering the age of Aquarius. Yeah, and it's to do with raising awareness. Our frequency is changing. We'll be more interested in love. We'll be more prone and open and activating things like manifestation, which is more 4 to 5D. Why don't you tell us before we get into the age of Aquarius and what's to come? Why don't you tell us the age before that, the one that we're just coming out of? I believe it's the age of Aries.
Well, actually, it's the age of Pisces. The age of Aries was the Roman period. And Plato referred to this as the great year. And we would call it the precession of the equinox. And every 2,200 years thereabouts, what happens, our position in the galaxy actually shifts. And so we go into, because every 72 years, we move 1 degree vis-a-vis the fixed stars. So it's a very slow, gradual shift. And over 24,000 years, actually, it's actually closer to 25, 26, we do a full rotation. And this it's called the Great Year. So let's take, for example, the age of Aquarius. We're coming out of the age of Pisces. Pisces is the fish. It's the Christian era. And we're going into a new era. And every time we go into a new era, the actual photon light, the light codes coming in from the different part of the galaxy that we move through changes. And this is one of the arguments why many of us feel we're going through an amazing period of ascension at the moment, is because really, the sun, for example, is a different color to what it was when we were younger. It was more yellow 20, 30 years ago, and now it's whiter. And I would argue that's one of the reasons why some of the dark practitioners have sought to color the skies, to darken the skies, actually to prevent us from going through this natural ascension process, which is what the age of Aquarius is about. And it's not going to stop. We are going to get there, even if we've been somewhat delayed due to the banking cartel and the global negative system of keeping us enslaved in a perceptual matrix. David Icke speaks very clearly on this in his book, The Trap and then The Dream. And many other great luminaries like Alex Collier speak about this too. And, we're really in a period where we're opening up to a galactic conversation. We're opening up to understanding there are other life forms out there. Pleiades, you mentioned Sirius before. There are countless other galactic entities. And we're coming to terms with that as we come out of our slumber, out of our ignorance. In some ways, light and darkness, light is knowledge and darkness is ignorance. And one other thing I'd say is to do with the more immediate cycles. So let's take Pluto. Pluto's in Aquarius now, moved in the other day. Last time Pluto was in Aquarius was the French Revolution and the American Declaration of Independence from Great Britain. Now, before that, if you go back another Pluto cycle, it was Galileo and Copernicus discovering heliocentricity and the fact that, we revolved around the sun rather than the sun revolved around us. And that sparked the scientific revolution. If you go back every Pluto cycle, there's one going further back where paper was invented and gunpowder was invented. You have these amazing cycles of sudden bursts of energy, of creativity. So here we are again, the beginning of the age of Aquarius, when Pluto and Mercury now have moved into Aquarius. Mars is following next week. It's a really exciting time, yes, for disclosure, but also for the creative process of we the people to be able to manifest our dreams.
Wow, very interesting. So let's talk about the royal family and the powers that be of the age of Pisces, because this is the age of fear, of greed, ego, and Aquarius is a completely different. It's a high frequency, it's love, it's abundance. Yeah. So what's happening now with the powers that be?
Well, it's really interesting. You see, I read symbols. That's why I love astrology. It's deeply symbolic. One looks at the glyphs and also one looks at the myth. I won't get into it now, but if you look at the myth of Ganymede, who was the cupbearer of Zeus, he spills the cup there and he should have got into trouble by Zeus, but actually Zeus forgives him. It's the whole point of the Aquarian age archetype is that people get the power back. And so that segues nicely into the conversation about any form of monarchy. And, I'm a Brit, and I grew up very much, under the monarchy system and believing in it. But so it's not personal, this, but the age of Aquarius is ushering in a collapse of those hierarchical structures. And you only have to look at the symbols of King Charles getting cancer. For me, that's a symbol, getting cancer. He's being shuffled off, and Princess Kate getting ill at the right time. And, the information is coming out that these systems do not serve the people in the 21st century in the new earth. And we're at this tipping point. And of course, the great institutions like the BBC are going to keep us in the old perceptual matrix of fear, to keep us locked down, more face nappies and all that sort of stuff. Where really, at the end of the day, this Leviathan, this monarchical system is going to die. The head of Medusa is finally being severed from its corrupt and, decadent body. And it's like the phoenix rising. In some ways, the archetype of Aquarius is the phoenix rising. From the ashes we shall rise, and we the people will be able to be truly free. We don't know what freedom is as a human species. We have forgotten what freedom is. We think it's a week's holiday in Turks and Caicos, because I've worked so bloody hard to get that holiday, and I lie on the beach for a week and I'm free. No, that's not freedom. That's posh slavery. And so, I've been mentored from afar by Barbara Marcinek, The Bringers of the Dawn, amazing book. And she talks about this, that we are ushering in a new era of enlightenment, of peace. That military industrial complex of keeping us in perpetual war is over. I mean, people may not like the Orange Man, but when the Orange Man came to power in 2016, 2017, there were 10 theaters of war being fought on behalf of the United States and within the global system. By the time he left office, there were no wars being fought. That is just a fact. People may not like that because of their perceptual programming, but that is the truth. And so, the astrology allows us to look at things a little bit more dispassionately, not get so personal, and see, right, we're at a time of a shift. How can we lean into it and make something really worthwhile for us, our children, our grandchildren, and our creativity?
So we are seeing the collapse of lots of information's coming out of the corruption of big pharma, drips and drabs, doctors, whistleblowers. We're seeing it with, the royal family. The Queen dies. Yes, she was old, but then we've got King Charles now, who is got cancer, who was very good friends with Jimmy Savile, and then Prince Andrews was very good friends with Jeffrey Epstein. So and then he's got trials going on. So there's a thing here that's coming out. That why hasn't this come out 20, 30 years ago? So it's definitely coming out. People are not trusting the media. Now, we are going into this age of Aquarius, and you mentioned that this is a cycle that happens, and new things are born when we go through this cycle. Does that mean that when we come towards the end of the cycle, that history will be repeated? We will have wars in the future again?
So I personally don't believe that, because I think progress is like a helix. It's always coiling, and there are times when we go down, absolutely. And we've had definitely a depreciation of culture and civilization over many hundreds of years. That is no doubt. And the fake history saying that we've come from, the Egyptian pyramids were built by slaves, Hebrew slaves, and is to me absolute nonsense. No, those were leftovers of a civilization that was far more sophisticated than ours. But notwithstanding that, I think we're definitely at a stage where we're in a position now to progress to such an extent where it's like the law of it's the law of consistency. We teach our children everything we know, and obviously it's appropriate. They teach their children. So by the time we leave the age of Aquarius, to answer your question, there is no way that we could go back to some three-dimensional negative polarity of war, where the consciousness on the planet is so high, we could only go one way. And we may go off in different directions. That's where we have choice, and different civilizations, different inventions. But we will move out of perpetual war. We have been kept in a matrix of dark, dark satanic war. And this is when I go quite, 5D and galactic. The influence of some of the negative ET entities, like some negative parts of the Orions and the Greys, and obviously the Anunnaki. They have had influence on us. I mean, isn't it? People have to ask these big questions. Why can't we fly over the Arctic and Antarctica? Why is Antarctica so out of bounds? And there are some seriously important portals down there, as well as military bases. And we've all read about General Byrd and his discoveries and the situation there. When we start to really open up to our history, his story, we realize that we haven't really been told it all. And this is part of the Age of Aquarius, is the massive disclosure that we're going to be able to partake in today.
No, interesting. When some people are listening to this, and they might say, how do we know about the Anunnaki or the Orion or the Andromedans, of these, entities who are much more, advanced than us. Some of them are, a lot of them are very good. A lot of them can be bad, and they want to control us. What do you say to them when they demand some type of evidence?
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing is, certainly I've read a lot of Edgar Cayce, and his evidence to me is very overwhelming when he's turned, under the subconscious, he's put people into, the semi-conscious, and much information has come out from these stories. I mean, many, many people have shared stories. The fact that the mainstream media hasn't sought to share these stories with the collective, which keeps the skepticism going, for me is very deliberate. And I certainly have come across many people whose stories are very, very convincing. And I personally have had two experiences in my life with non-terrestrials, which were very physical and positive in my mind. So I definitely know it's there. But I am still naturally a skeptic. I mean, I don't believe everything I listen to. And I think we have to use our heart and use our intuition. But for me, it's not so much about whether that's right about the Andromedans or not. The issue is humans are innately good. I don't believe that humans are innately bad. I believe there have been entities that have kept us in a perceptual reality to think that we are not who we think we are. And so I know when I move around, I've been to over 90 countries, I get around, talk to a lot of people. The vast majority of humans are really good, loving people. And why then doesn't the government reflect that? To me, that's the question we should be asking.
Mm-hmm.
Because we know what the answer is. Then there's some corruption within the higher echelons of government. And that has been the case, because otherwise that government would reflect we the people. And the more we can realize that we've been manipulated, we can see that manipulation. We say, no, we're not playing in your sandpit. We're not doing that. We're going to do it our way. And we're going to elect people who are deeply, deeply authentic, who don't need to be blackmailed, who don't need to have, to be paid. They can often, work because they passionately believe in service, or maybe they have their own money to do it. They can't be bribed. And I think we're going to be going into a world like that as we raise our frequency, because when we raise our frequency, we have a different perspective and a different understanding of our reality. And so we have also different morals, and we become more authentic, we become more loving, and we become more free. And so that whole frequency rises up. So we actually end up changing. It's almost like our epistemology, our ontology, it shifts.
I mean, how long? Well, where would you see, you see us in 5 to 10 years, the world? Do you think we would see this in our lifetime? Do you think we might see a very, very small change in the next 10 years? Is it going to be gradual? What are your thoughts?
So before I answer that specifically, I just want you and your listeners to glance back to, I'm just arbitrarily say 2016 when the timeline changed, because, for the first time ever, a man got elected in the United States who was not placed there. And that is just the truth. He was not placed there by the political establishment. And if you think how far we have come as a global population, some more faster than others, of course, depending on their awakening process, is phenomenal. We were all sleepy poos 10 years ago. I mean, I speak for myself, and this one was the David Icke's of this world. I mean, before 2016, I had not figured out very much. I had a few hunches and all that. And I think especially since 2020, since the fake planned pandemic, the lockdown, human beings, a lot of them, sadly not enough, but it's growing exponentially, have really started to ask questions and realize that no, the government, the authorities are not serving the people. Before that, many of us thought they were. And that's where we were in the dark, our ignorance. And so I see the change happening pretty quickly. It's already started to happen. I think this year is going to be pretty fast. I mean, I'm already seeing disclosure happening on a massive scale in the last 2 weeks. I think it's going to be a big culmination around November because something has to happen, with the election. And I believe it's going to be a massive landslide in the United States for Mr. Trump. I know he won in a massive landslide last time, but it couldn't play out that way for the reasons I don't fully understand, and I'm okay not knowing. I mean, part of my freedom is being able to say I don't know, but but I'm seeking to be awake. I'm seeking to. I have a piece of the jigsaw puzzle, as does you, as does Tom, Dick, and Harry, and that's the new civilization. We put it together and we create it.
No, absolutely, definitely. I think our awareness as it's expanding, that's what they mean when they say nothing can stop what's coming, because
Yeah.
it's just going to expand and expand, and it doesn't matter what happens, even in the political realm. I think once our consciousness just expands, there will be no room for these evildoers in the world, and we will just overpower them. That's what I personally think. Interesting, very very interesting. Well, George Lewis, thank you so much for sharing everything with us today. That's really lovely. I really enjoyed that. Is there anything else that you'd like to say to the viewers before we finish?
Maybe I could say for any of you who are still a little bit in fear or feel tired and waiting and maybe losing a little bit of hope because this has taken quite a long time, I have a lot of hope, and I see a huge amount of evidence of the new earth being born, and it's going to become more physically manifest, more physically visible very, very soon. So join me in being hopeful, because the more we can hope and remain in that frequency of intention, our thoughts become our reality. We really can help create the new earth.
Well, thank you very much, George, and we'll speak again very soon. You take care and God bless. Bye bye.
God bless. Bye bye.